Welcome to this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today, our guest is Alan Faith from Cross-Sell. Came all the way up from the great state of Kentucky. Welcome, Alan.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you in the studio. Let's just get started with a little bit about you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your career path that led you to where you are today with Cross-Sell.
Absolutely. So I had a bit of an interesting path into automotive and landing at Cross-Sell. I actually spent about 18 years in the green industry running a landscape company in the Lexington, Kentucky area, doing landscape installation and landscape maintenance. Got to the point where I wasn't seeing my kids grow up, just spending too much time between landscaping and snow removal, et cetera. So I was looking to make a change. Through some common friends, had a conversation with the general manager at Cross-Sell and came over as the sales and customer service manager in 2017. And it was the greatest move I ever made. Mm-hmm. Within the first month or two, while still trying to learn automotive, I began to see the value in Cross-Sell and the data and how important it was to these dealers that were using the data. And it was just a perfect fit. And again, greatest decision I ever made.
Cool. Well, let's dive into the data because you definitely have the data. Carvana's been in the news. I guess they're always in the news. But what's going on with them right now? What are the numbers telling you?
So in March of 23, this past month, in the states that we provide data for, we saw that Carvana only claimed about 0.64% of the monthly used car market. Around 16,000 sales in those states. But even then, in March, Carvana was on the rise from February, where previously they'd only had about 9,500 sales. So they took a little bit of a dip in February, but they're back on the rise in March. Be interesting to see what happens in Q2.
Cool. Well, let's shift to direct sales. I mean, the direct sales model is getting, a lot more people are entering that. Like Rivian. What does that mean for dealers, and what are your numbers telling you? Like, is that even a significant part of the market?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a major concern for dealers across the country. And a big concern is Rivian right now. Mm-hmm. They are making some progress in what we consider the big three EV states. They saw a huge spike in EV sales in March after a bit of a roller coaster ride over the past year. They've been up and down, but you see that with a lot of these direct-to-consumer EV sellers, and a lot of that I think is based on production and delivery needs. Mm-hmm. I'm really interested to see what they're going to do in Q2 and really the balance of 23 with the release of the Rivian R1S. Mm-hmm. We're finally going to see a full-size SUV electric vehicle. One would think that's going to be really appealing to the masses with the popularity of full-size SUVs. We've never seen one before. There's really not been an EV option in the SUV market, so I think it could show up and be a major disruptor, and we're going to be paying close attention to that. And if it is the disruptor that we think it may be, then we'll definitely see a big spike in those direct-to-consumer sales.
Well, I notice a lot more Rivians on the road than I ever did before. I mean, it seems like 6 months ago you might see one or two here or there, but boy, now they're not quite Camrys, but they're everywhere.
Absolutely. Now seeing one, if not every day, every couple of days, and I actually passed an R1S on the road the other day for the first time. So it was the first time I'd seen one in person, and I have a feeling it won't be the last.
Yeah. Yep. Quick side note. I want to ask about Tesla. In particular in Texas, they when they opened their factory in Texas, what are you seeing down in Texas as far as Teslas go?
So, yeah, absolutely. Tesla opened their Gigafactory in June of 22 in Texas. They took about a 20% drop when that factory opened, probably due to production issues as they got that factory up and going. Mm-hmm. But we've seen them start to bounce back. Q1 of 23, they're making up about 70% of the EV market share in Texas, which is closer to their average prior, which was 79%. So it seems like things are coming back up to about where they were. and they're hovering in that 70 to 80% market share of the EV market in Texas. So still have a pretty good stronghold in that state.
Nice. Well, hey, let's talk about EVs as a whole. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have the goal of replacing all internal combustion engines with EVs. The state I live in, New Jersey, says by 2035 that we're only going to sell EVs. Right now, what percentage of vehicles sold are EVs?
So in March of 23, it looks like EV sales made up about 4 to 5% of all sales, all new sales in the states that we track. California leads the way. 16% of their new sales were EVs in March of 23.
Mm-hmm.
Other states typically in that 3 to 5% range. We're still a long ways from being able to make that transition from internal combustion to all EV. I think we've got a long ways to go, and there's a lot of steep expectations on how quickly that transition can occur, because there's a lot of things that have to happen before we can actually make that transition. It's infrastructure, it's charging abilities in homes, what can the power grids handle? So we've got a long ways to go before we're going to get there.
Okay. Well, car dealers, especially a franchise auto dealer, they're really only able to sell what their manufacturers can build. And so if right now, if we're looking at a 4 or 5% of the market is EVs, if dealers are forced to try to go to 100% EVs, are the manufacturers going to even be able to produce the products? I mean, do you feel that that's going to be something that they'll be able to do?
Eventually. I don't think we're ready to make that transition yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of things that are going to have to change. It really depends on the manufacturer. So Volkswagen, for example, is leading the way. They're doing a great job. Chevy is doing a great job. Ford is a little bit farther behind.
Mm-hmm.
In the state of California, in March of 23, Volkswagen's EV sales made up almost 70% of their sales.
Oh, wow.
In March of 23, Chevy sales, of all of their new sales in the month, about 30% of their sales were EVs. And then when we look at Ford, they're coming in third place. Of all of their sales in California in March, they only had about 9% EV sales. So Volkswagen is doing a great job, a little bit of a smaller lineup than comparing to Chevy and Ford, but we've still got a long ways to go before we're going to reach that level with the domestic and import OEMs. Just, they need to offer more models. They're going to have to take into consideration the service issues. So they are on their way, but we've got a pretty good ways to go before we're going to land there.
Okay, let's talk about the plug-in hybrids. I mean, there's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of popular vehicles that are plug-in hybrids right now. How are plug-in hybrids doing when compared to EVs as far as customer demand, sales? What are you seeing?
So right now we're seeing that they are growing in popularity each month. When comparing PHEVs with EVs and your typical hybrid, they still come in third place. PHEVs are making up about 11% of that market share, and then pretty evenly split between EVs and hybrid vehicles. I think a big challenge there is the range that they're getting out of PHEVs currently. So I would say as we see that range extend and get up north of 50 or 100 miles on that EV charge, then I think that we will see that market share increase dramatically. But for now, they're staying in that 10 to 15% market share range.
Okay. Well, let's talk about customer retention. I mean, every dealer in America, is paying attention to their customer retention. It's definitely one of the most important things if you want to maintain your business and grow your business is retain your customers. Well, when a lot of these franchise dealers didn't have EVs available to them, and even today when they don't have as many as their customers may like to buy available to them, there's definitely some customers that that kind of jump over the fence and they go buy a Rivian or they go buy a Tesla while they wait for the Chevys they've always driven or the Fords they've always driven to provide a vehicle that's either available or that they want. What can dealers do to kind of guard those customers and for the ones that already jumped ship? What are some of the things that they can do to get them back, once they do have product available?
So dealers may need to shift their brand identity to be more EV inclusive. Buyers are going to want to buy from someone that has and establish business and develop trust and a rapport with those dealers where they can go to and have that vehicle serviced and someone they know and can depend on locally, as opposed to having to travel and wonder where you're going to get that vehicle serviced. So these dealers really need to work on a rebranding that they are the spot to purchase your EV. They're going to be able to answer your questions. They're going to be able to service your vehicle, and they're going to be able to take care of you in the long term with that EV, as opposed to you having no trusted source or being 100 miles away from the nearest service center.
Yeah.
So I think that is how they're going to be able to make that shift and pull those buyers back over the fence or keep them from jumping ship.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, for the first time when you buy an EV, I mean, I know my wife has considered it, and it made me really nervous to think about, I've got to run this electric, to the garage, and what, I mean, I'm gonna have to redo my stucco, or what, what am I gonna have? What are all these unknowns, all these scary things? And then you think about, if you've never owned one or driven one, there's still the range anxiety, and so I would be with you. I agree with you. I think I would definitely prefer to buy from a dealer that is local. I can walk in the showroom and talk to them if I'm unhappy, as opposed to someone that I can't see.
Absolutely. And if you think about travel, ranges on EVs are expanding all the time, right? So it has become a viable vehicle to take on a vacation or to travel long distances with. You can find places where, you have rapid chargers and you can easily charge the vehicle, be back on the road. But the question is, when you're out on the road, if something happens, where are you going to take that vehicle to get it serviced?
Yeah.
Where is the nearest service center for that direct consumer EV versus I can find an OEM dealership in every town that I pass. You're probably never going to be outside of 30 or 40 miles from someone that could service that EV that's going to be, that you purchase from an OEM dealer. So I think that is the race.
Yeah. That makes sense. I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, if your car breaks down, I think what's AAA tow you 150 miles or something, so you're never 150 miles from the closest Ford dealership.
Absolutely.
I mean, probably not even. I mean, nowhere in the United States, maybe Alaska, but if you break down, you might be more than 150 miles away from a Tesla or Rivian.
Absolutely.
I mean, so I think I never thought about that. You gave me one more anxiety.
Yeah. Absolutely. We just went on vacation a couple weeks ago, and I thought about that the whole way there. Because I'd been looking at some data on EVs and thinking about this exact instance. And I thought, if we broke down right here, I know that I can get the vehicle we're in serviced relatively soon, somewhere relatively close. But if an EV, I don't know. I don't know where I'm at, in terms of finding a service center that's going to be capable of determining the issue and getting me back on the road. So it definitely is something to think about.
I hadn't thought about that. Well, Alan, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
I think we've covered everything, Brian. I just really appreciate you having me, and it's been a great time.
Great. Thank you for coming. And thank you for taking the time to join us for this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. My guest today was Alan Faith from CrossSell. We hope to see you again soon.